Fire, 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 fire.
What is this? Stores keep closing! As a white woman, I can tell you with utmost certainty, I have not been to a Starbucks in 2 months. I need to get my pumpkin spice latte sooner rather than later before it goes away. I only go once per season. That's like my rule of thumb because it's overpriced. I could go to a coffee like little store, get something that's a lot more like, I don't know, a lot more tasty, and it's probably cheaper. Anyway, let's see it!
Starbucks is struggling.
I'm a white woman, I'm an
Their
expert.
profits are down by a whopping 50% following 6 straight quarters of losses. And a declining image has left one of America's most recognizable brands in a bit of a bind. They just recently announced that they'd be closing a swathe of stores as well as laying off 900 corporate staff members. This is after laying off another 1,100 corporate staff just in February.
It's a lot of women with no jobs.
Customers are reporting high prices, long queues, and substandard product time and time again. And even staples like their pumpkin spice latte has lost its shine. And
the most popular time for Starbucks was when Tumblr was around and Pinterest. You could not sneeze on the internet without seeing a white woman with a fucking Starbucks. Like as a picture, like on Facebook, on Instagram, on Tumblr. It was everywhere. It was actually insidious.
Left room for competitors to take their shot at the king, with great success in some cases. But it wasn't always like this. At one point, Starbucks was America's sweetheart. Their come up was a real hero's journey, the story of one man who turned a local coffee roaster into a global sensation.
Wow.
Left, then came back and did it all again.
What?
But since those days, clearly quite a lot has changed. Largely for the worst. And it's left Starbucks in
I know that Starbucks came from Seattle and it was initially just like a... You know, like a pretty popular chain. Starbucks was ruined by hipsters? No, it wasn't. Starbucks was really popular because of hipsters. It wasn't ruined by it directly. I actually think because it was so popular, it had good quality, or at least relatively good quality. I think it's gotten bad because like people just aren't buying it, so they've had to cut down. I know what you're trying to say. It's like, oh my god, hipsters ruined it. It's like, but because it was so popular, at least it had the quality.
Situation where it's fighting desperately, but doesn't seem to have quite as many customers in its corner as it once did. So sit back and let's learn why Starbucks fell off.
Ooh.
People tend to have quite strong opinions about coffee, especially about other people's coffee choices.
True.
Some people will look at you like you just admitted to drinking horse urine if you tell them that you like Starbucks. But
gross.
others might need
really
a double
like
shot,
anymore.
vanilla, hazelnut, methamphetamine, venti, frappuccino, literally every
Methamphetamine frappuccino is wild.
morning. But no matter which side of the aisle you end up landing on,
Once a
it's pretty
season, that's my
impossible
rule
to
of
deny
thumb.
the impact that Starbucks has had on all of our lives. It began in 1971 when 3 partners, Jerry, Gordon, and Zev, opened a little store in Seattle's Pike Place Market.
Yeah,
they had no intention
I
of
know
actually
about
making
that.
coffee. Instead, they sold like roast.
Look at that, man. Look at the prices.
They had no intention of actually making coffee.
$1.80 on average, man. That's crazy.
Instead, they sold like roasted coffee beans,
1971.
teas, and spices. And they did fine, really. They became a staple of the local community, a place where you could go get your beans, come home, and then brew them for the family.
Aw,
but things
that's
changed in
cute.
1982 with the arrival of one man, and a name that you might want to remember, Howard Schultz.
Ooh,
In
chairman and
1982,
CEO
Howard
of
Schultz joined as
Starbucks.
head of marketing. And on one of his very first business trips, he visited Milan, Italy, and experienced something that would completely change his business back home: Italian coffee bars. So at this time in the 80s, coffee culture in America largely revolved around drip coffee, served in a big mug or
Folgers. Ugh. I don't really like Folgers. I'm not gonna lie. Sorry. If you like Folgers, that's okay. I don't like Folgers.
styrofoam cup, often with
Instant
free
coffee,
refills in like a
ugh.
diner or an office. You would drink coffee for the caffeine, not for fun. In Italy,
True.
on the other hand, the story was a little bit different. Over there, coffee was a social ritual. It was something that you would drink at a bar.
People didn't know about cappuccinos until it got popularized by Starbucks, to be completely honest with you.
With friends and as a communal activity as much as for the caffeine. It was something that would be woven into your day-to-day life and not neck down in order to get a jolt of energy. The drinks had standardized names, each of which was designed for a different type of gathering, and they were priced pretty fairly
Frappuccino. No,
so
I
that
love
everyone could
frappuccinos.
take part.
They're my favorite.
A long shot from the way it was done in
Mochas
America.
are good too.
And Schultz saw this idea, tried to bring it to America to create this real third place where people could grab a drink with their friends, hang out, and make coffee part of their...
All of the senior girls in my high school when I was a freshman, they would go to Starbucks, and one of my dreams was to have a boy buy me a Starbucks because he liked me. That never happened, but like, you know, I could dream. I did buy Starbucks by myself with my own pocket money because I didn't have a job yet, but all the popular girls would get their boyfriends to buy them coffee. Some Starbucks coffee, a strawberry frappuccino. Yeah. I know, but people are gonna fucking hate you and be like, ew, gross, Starbucks, but it was very cute. It was cute.
Social life.
It was
instead of just fuel.
expensive.
But it was actually a controversial idea. So controversial, in fact, that none of the original Starbucks bosses wanted to accept it. And so Schultz was forced to leave, start his own cafe chain, implement these ideas, and did it to such great success that he ended up coming back and buying out Starbucks from its original...
Wait, this guy actually bought... He left and bought it back again. That's so based.
owners just 4 years later.
It's me.
And this is
did
where the
that.
Starbucks that you and I would recognize today actually began. Starbucks became this place where everything was designed for familiarity and comfort. They chose round tables because they were less isolating and more inviting. They encouraged...
I saw so many college kids going to Starbucks with their stupid Apple laptops and studying there, and it pissed me off because nobody could sit anywhere. Oh my god, I hated it so much.
Customers to take their time with their
You'd
drinks,
have to go and sit
every
somewhere
detail
else.
was carefully curated
Like in
to
another
make their
place,
cafes
in the
into
mall.
community spots to great success. They went from 6 stores in 1987 to 3,500 stores in the year 2000 when Schultz finally decided to step down as CEO. And when the 2008 recession finally hit and Starbucks was struggling once again, Howard Schultz came out of retirement like Pele or something.
That's crazy. They just keep sending him back. He says, nah, I'm done. And then they just pull him back. Like, please, Mr. Howard, you gotta save us.
To get them back to their roots of being this third place
This guy-
where anyone can hang out. And
This guy's probably kind of just a fucking genius with businesses. I'm not trying to glaze, but like, what is it, twice now they've brought him back?
have an affordable,
He's good at
social,
business.
communal drink with a friend. He shut down all of the Starbucks in America for a day to retrain the baristas on how to improve their espresso quality. They brought in new machines, and the company experimented with new menu items and leaned heavily into becoming an ethical community spot. And it seemed like it worked. A couple of years post-recession, they were profitable again. No one could really seem to beat them, and they were everywhere. But no good thing lasts forever, unfortunately. The pandemic set in motion the real shift for Starbucks. The concept of hanging out indoors with others.
That's when they brought through drive-thrus as well. I don't think I ever heard of drive-thrus until like 2019 or 2020. Now, I'm gonna be honest, I think the only time I've ever ordered Starbucks is through the drive-thru. I think I've been once into the store, probably like 3 years ago. The virus. Yeah, the virus did very bad damage to the economy, to like sit-down places.
Which Starbucks had built its entire model on, was immediately cancelled, right?
It's
Coffee
sad.
culture went back almost overnight.
We had drive-thru Starbucks on the West Coast in 2012. I never really heard of it. I mean, again, this is location by location basis. In New Zealand, I never heard of drive-thrus like pretty much ever. Like outside of like McDonald's or whatever, that doesn't count. I'm talking like Starbucks specifically. I never saw that in 2012 up until I left.
Being incredibly individual. And the big winners from this were the drive-through coffee shops like Dutch Bros and Seven Brew, which grew steadily throughout this period.
Yeah, and Kaladi Brothers or whatever it's called. There's like a couple of other ones that are on the West Coast.
Starbucks did try to ride the wave by pushing their apps and their collection-only stores, but they were already in too deep with the old model and stuck between two worlds.
Like
post-pandemic,
Seattle
almost
and
60% of coffee is actually ordered at drive-thrus in the US, and it's growing year on year. The pandemic was really this huge turning point for how people chose to spend their time, And sitting in a Starbucks was one of the first things
Indoor
to be cut from the budget. And despite the fact that their marketing materials would have you believe that they really want to be a community location where people can hang out, the reality is that Starbucks is a $90 billion corporation, and they've done all of the same things that you'd expect from any other company that size. Over the last decade, they've really aggressively cut costs. They've deprioritized the look and feel of their stores, and they've focused on squeezing more profits out of their once extremely loyal clientele. Having a place where people buy one drink and then...
It was already really overpriced back then. Now it's extremely overpriced. Coffee. And it doesn't validate it too, because I think it's actually gone down in quality in recent years.
Sit around for an hour is a really bad way to make money every quarter. And so they started making more and more stores have less and less seating. Their staffing priorities focused more on meeting drive-through demand at the expense of in-store customers, because they generate more dollars per hour. And they jacked up the prices to the absolute maximum that they felt that they could get away with. But you can only squeeze people so far before they break. Since the pandemic, inflation has been...
I'm wondering when McDonald's is going to break on that too, because McDonald's has been increasing, and every other fast food store has been increasing their prices more and more and more. They got rid of the dollar menu. Like, when is enough enough? Starbucks is clearly hitting a critical point because they've lost 50%, but like, McDonald's hasn't really been suffering, have they?
Pretty intense.
I don't know.
And it seriously hit the food and drinks world. But also by the time the pandemic had rolled around, the coffee business was already bigger than ever, and there were more and more options for everyone at any price point. Starbucks had, to some degree, been able to justify its prices through all of the auxiliary perks that you would get along with your coffee. You get to sit in a nice location, you wouldn't feel rushed or pressured to leave, and you had things like free Wi-Fi at your disposal. So you could
it was really bad though.
But the hand was kind of forced, and instead of doubling down on the third place model, they tried to align themselves more with the rapid delivery model. More and more coffee is consumed on the go, and the interior of a Starbucks has progressively shifted to meet the demand from those customers. And the $8 Starbucks cup of coffee...
They're getting bullied out by Dutch Bros too. Yeah, like Caribou Coffee or whatever, and Dutch Bros, and there's a couple of other ones that have branched out from Seattle, because Seattle is a very big coffee place, and Starbucks obviously came from there. But I think a lot of people are competing now that Starbucks is kind of fucking dropping the ball. There's so many Dutch Bros. Yeah, for sure, and I think that's because Starbucks is failing.
It doesn't quite feel as good when you order it from a drive-thru and drink it in your car as it does when you sit inside a nice environment with a friend. The more price-conscious consumer can make coffee at home now, or trade down to an even cheaper coffee place like McDonald's, while the more affluent clientele has access to a bunch of like artisanal spots, to specialty coffee, and to independent businesses that have way more insight and time to discuss the details and intricacies of their products.
I'm gonna say it. I have been consuming a lot more coffee from places that are tiny little hole in the walls made, and all the coffee is made by white women with nose piercings. They make the best coffee. I love it so much, man. I've been to so many places. Like, I'm not saying that men can't make great coffee, but there's something about a white woman handing me a coffee, and it tastes so fucking good, man. I'm a white woman connoisseur. Small spots make good coffee, and they cost like a little bit less or the same as a Starbucks. I get way more enjoyment out of it too.
Independent cafes are now so much more
Starbucks
trendy and is seen as a more socially acceptable choice. While Starbucks is better known for employee union busting, boycotts, and being overall bad value for money. I think Starbucks held on to this idea that they were a real third place when they haven't really been that for years. At their core, they're a fast food dessert shop that people go to for convenience and consistency. It's more like McDonald's than it is a local community diner. But McDonald's at least has the Big Mac. For Starbucks, far too much of their menu was replaceable, and their niche, unique offerings clearly
everybody can make a Frappuccino because it's not copyrighted. You can't get a Big Mac anywhere else. That's actually a really good point. Coffee can't be copyrighted in that sense. Like, you can still... I think maybe Frappuccino is copyrighted, but at the end of the day, just don't call it a Frappuccino. It's just frozen milk and like ice cubes and some strawberry syrup.
Haven't been enough to keep people hooked, especially not the prices that
Yeah,
they're trying to sell
lattes
them
and
at.
cappuccinos
And their
are
CEO has
universal. You can't
recognized this
copyright
today.
it.
They've vowed to minimize price hikes going forward and focus their new strategy on bringing back the cozy interiors. But I think it might be too little, too late, because while Starbucks
I
has
think it's gonna get worse. COVID hasn't been around for a long while, and we still haven't like recovered. Frappuccino's copyright is why McDonald's has frappes. Really, I'm gonna look it up right now. Not that I'm doubting you, I'm just curious. Frappuccino copyright. Frappuccino is a registered trademark owned by Starbucks. But you can still make one, you just can't call it that. It's kind of like how a hamburger is still a hamburger, but you can't call it a McDouble or, you know, a triple cheeseburger. That's what I'm saying. Or you can't call it a triple cheeseburger. I think there's just certain things that you can't really copyright.
been doing layoff after layoff, closing stores and forcing AI into the stores that are still around, the competition has been innovating, listening to customers, and actually just like giving people what they're screaming out for. And this might not actually be that obvious if you live in the US, where you can still find Starbucks that are 200 meters away from each other, but it's a lot more obvious in other parts of the world, especially in China, where the story of Starbucks looks a lot more dire.
A lot of fast food places have failed in China. They have a very different palate too. Apparently there's a lot of things that certain cultures just don't like, and it's kind of the same thing the other way around. Like, Americans wouldn't be able to eat certain things because they think it's weird or they don't like it. It's a culture thing. There's nothing wrong with it.
When you think of coffee culture, China might not be the first country that jumps to mind, but maybe it should. China has taken some 800 million people out of poverty since the 80s.
Wow.
And in the process, they've created this whole new consumer class. This group of people who are looking for nice little treats to spend their money on. And Starbucks has been for a while desperate to fill that role. They opened their first Chinese branch in 1999 and used their first mover advantage to completely take over. At their peak, they had...
I think there's several fast food chains that completely bombed. I think it was like Pizza Hut, Burger King. There's a couple of other ones that failed in China. I just can't name them off the top of my head.
Over 40% of the coffee market, but since then they've had a serious fall off.
KFC,
in less than a decade, they've
KFC
gone from holding
too,
over 40% of the Chinese coffee market to under 15%.
Wow,
Starbucks had been
that's not
gambling
good.
on this idea that as China became wealthier, consumers there would behave increasingly like Americans. Basically, they'd drink Starbucks and eat McDonald's. And in a way, the Chinese did begin to behave more like the Americans.
Not super often.
Just not in the way that Starbucks expected.
The street food is better. Yeah, you're also competing for a cheaper street food option. Like, street food is insanely popular in China.
Because while China has this large new middle class, that group has been subject to many of the same pressures that you see in the rest of the world. Chinese disposable income levels have been pretty stagnant, and they've also grown tired of the increasing inflation that a place like Starbucks has been imposing onto its customers. But also, don't know if you've noticed, China has been on a bit of an industrial tear lately. The technology is getting pretty wild over there, and the coffee industry has been no exception. The main competitor in China, Luckin, has capitalized on the dissatisfaction by offering cheap, really customizable drinks. They focus on mobile-only orders and emphasize speed and convenience.
Yeah, that's another thing. Everything is very mobile-oriented, and American companies aren't super duper mobile oriented. People still kind of like picking up stuff and like buying things from stores, even if it's not super duper popular like it used to be. I think in China and in other Asian countries, it's a lot more popular and normalized because everything is on your phone. Like your credit card, your bus card, like all that stuff.
Like half of the price of a
Not
Starbucks.
sponsored.
They often have literally zero seating inside of the stores. And it's worked really well for them. It's worked so well that even though Starbucks had a 20-year head start, Luckin now has more stores in China than Starbucks
Holy
does.
shit!
And whereas Starbucks is closing stores in the US, Luckin is actually expanding into the US, having opened a couple of stores in New York City already. In fact, Starbucks was so terrified of this competition that at the opening of the very first Luckin store, Starbucks bought ad space on an empty lot across the street and plastered it with advertising.
fuck? No, look at me! Look at me! We're not failing! I promise!
To remind people
That's
that they
pretty
still
funny.
exist.
That's
But
pretty
meanwhile, Lookin was offering $1.99 coffees for new customers.
Wow, that's so freaking cheap. What the heck?
And I think one of those strategies is a lot more appealing than the other. Starbucks is ultimately like a fast food business,
Dude,
right?
$2 for a cup of coffee, that's kind of a steal in this day and age. I know it's still cheaper to make your own coffee, but if you're out and about, $2 is like really good. I'm telling you, man, that's really amazing.
Most of us. And as such, they've been susceptible to many of the same risks that other fast food places are. The McDonald's CEO recently said in an interview that
what we see with middle and lower income consumers is actually a different story. It's that consumers under a lot of pressure. In our industry, traffic for lower income consumers is down double digits.
That's a good thing. That's a really good thing.
And it's because people are
because
either...
they can't fucking afford your food when a meal for one person at the lowest costs 16 fucking dollars. It's not cheap anymore. You're actually just like destroying your customer base. What the hell?
Choosing to skip a meal, or they're choosing to just eat at home.
Whereas in the past, consumers would usually trade down from sit-in restaurants to more affordable options when the economy got rough. They're not doing that anymore. Prices are so high, even at historically more affordable.
That's crazy. $11.29 for a spicy deluxe. And then just the burger is $6. $6. God, that's so gross to look at. I remember in New Zealand, even though it's like New Zealand dollars and everything, I remember picking up a fucking McChicken for $1. When I was a little kid, I'd go to the mall and I'd get myself a little McChicken. Just a McChicken. I didn't have a lot of money. I just had $1 and I'd be like, yippee, $1.
Locations that trading down to McDonald's is not really a feasible option anymore. And a similar story is playing out with Starbucks. They're not really fancy enough to attract the clientele that would go to an independent coffee shop, but they're not affordable enough to satisfy the people who are looking for a quick way to drink some caffeine. And all of this has been compounded by the fact that society has fundamentally changed quite a lot in the last 5 years. The idea of sitting down for an hour to sip a coffee with friends, like Howard Schultz once dreamed, is basically gone.
I think it also plays into the psychology of being too stressed out. How many of you like go and do something for fun by yourself? Like, I'm not talking about, like, I'm not even talking about going out with friends. Like, you go and get a coffee and you go for a walk and, like, you feel like you should be doing something. That's me. I think I have pretty high, like, I don't know. I have, like, high anxiety. Gym? No, I'm talking about, like, getting... No, not the gym. That's different. That's exercise. I'm talking about, like, oh, I want a treat for myself. I want to chill out and not think about, I don't know, streaming, or I don't want to think about work or whatever. And you go and grab yourself something and sit on a park bench. Like, you don't really do that anymore. You get stressed out.
Individualism has really won, and people's consumption choices are affecting that. And so the fact that the CEO is trying to focus on bringing back the cozy new interiors and making Starbucks feel homey.
This might be a hot take. I really want the war between Russia and Ukraine to end fucking quicker, because I really, really want to go to Russia or to Ukraine and go to these fucking restaurants, because they seem so much more like community oriented, because capitalism hasn't completely consumed that society yet. I really want to go and visit. I'd be visiting family, obviously. That's another big reason, because I have family there in both countries. But it's like, I just want to go, man. It's a hot take to want the war to end. Yeah, but I'm not gonna get into that. Anyway,
I think it might be too little too late.
I'd
They
love
seem
to
to be
go to
convinced that they'll
Poland.
be
It
able
sounds
to go
awesome.
back to their former glory just by using AI and doing some renovations. But I'm not sure how much people actually even want that today, least of all from their local Starbucks. And amongst all of this climate, there are so many more headwinds.
You can visit Russia right now, though. I don't know how to break it to you, but I don't think so. Not that I think you're a little bit wrong on this. I don't want to go off on a tangent, but it's not a great time for an American to go to Russia right now. Yeah.
For them. Coffee inflation is
Or
10
Ukraine,
times
for
the
that
average
matter. It
inflation
doesn't
for
matter.
food,
Buy
thanks
both.
to tariffs and really bad harvests. And customers have more high quality alternatives than ever before. But I guess we'll see. For now, I'm going to stick to my little mocha pot and occasional outing to a nicer cafe. And I don't think there's much of a future for Starbucks in my life outside of airports and train stations. But let me know what you think.
I actually think that Starbucks dying is actually kind of a good thing, because there's a lot of places on the West Coast that I've heard of that are expanding, and I looked it up. Like Seattle's Best Coffee, Tully's Coffee, that's in Washington. Dutch Bros has expanded a lot outside of Washington and other places. I know there's like coffee stores in also California that have expanded upwards and downwards into the Midwest as well. I think it's a good thing. I think it's good that they're expanding, and I think that it's good that Starbucks is paying the price for being so bold and being the forefront and center of what people think of coffee. Seattle's Best sucks, IMO. Yeah, but some people like it. I actually used to drink a lot of Seattle's Best, and then I stopped because I didn't really like it anymore. Again, I like competition. I want to be able to have options. That's why I hate it when you like go out and you have like restaurants and it's just a bunch of the same restaurants kind of thing.
Fire, 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 fire.